It's not true, and you have to ask yourself, why, if it's not true, and I'll continue making the case here as to why it's not true, why, if it's not true, are they so dead set on making us believe this in school? You were taught a bunch of crap in school about not only Thanksgiving, and we've gone through that, you've been taught a bunch of crap in regards to how the Native Americans, indigenous, used to live. Everyone is flawed. All societies they've made some mistakes, especially the ones that raped, pillaged, scalped, and not scalped in a way to actually count the kills in war, but scalping women and children alive as a torture method, and cannibalism. Okay? Some of those got away from these tribes, just to let you know. They didn't teach you about that in school. So you would probably, if you were in school, believe, and you heard everyone in the media talking about this, that Columbus, this is the reason for Indigenous Peoples Day. Columbus was this raping, genocidal maniac who was racist. And I'll tell you what, I believed some of these myths.
Yeah.
Even I believed some of the myths when I'm like, oh, that whole thing is completely untrue. So it's now been acknowledged by Joe Biden. October 11th, it's Indigenous People. For people who don't know, it used to be Columbus Day. Now it's Indigenous Peoples Day, which just when you think about the day, it's like, okay, the man discovered the new world. These people, meaning the indigenous people, were they just happened to be here for centuries and didn't use the wheel.
I know. They was like, oh, what are you famous for? Well, we were here when that guy showed up.
Yeah. Why don't you just call it No Wheels Day?
Yeah.
Psaki fielded questions about Biden's decision to change our traditions here in North America yesterday, Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day.
To Indigenous Peoples Day.
Well, today is both Columbus Day, as of now, and this is why you're asking the question, as well as Indigenous Peoples Day. I'm not aware of any discussion of ending that, either of ending the prior federal holiday at this point. But I know that recognizing today as Indigenous Peoples Day is something that the president felt strongly about personally. He's happy to be the first president to celebrate and to make it the
speaker.
The history moving forward.
I felt strongly. No, that was his urinary tract infection. So look, here are some of the myths we'll just go through here because right now they want to. And I understand. Look, no one is saying that any history is flawless. Okay?
No.
We're not saying, of course, every single society has made mistakes. What you have to ask yourself is which society ended up creating what is best. So here's a claim that probably, we have to move on with this, that you probably believe that Columbus, speaking of Hitler, committed genocide, that he was just like Hitler. This was just echoed yesterday. I need to read this because it was according to NBA coach, I don't know.
More
Greg
sports.
Popovich.
He initiated a New World genocide.
Nope.
Wrong.
That's what he did. And beginning with him and what he set in motion and what followed,
what was that?
Meant the annihilation of every indigenous person in Hispaniola, which was Haiti and the Dominican Republic today. And it's no knock on Italian Americans. That's a silly argument.
No one was taking it as a knock on Italian Americans. The definition of genocide is a systematic and widespread extermination or attempted extermination of a national, racial, religious, or ethnic group. Okay, couple of things. First off, there are more people who are one portion insert tribe today than ever in American history because a lot of them intermarried and a lot of them took these beautiful Native American women as wives and they integrated. Okay? Look, this is, is that considered racist now? Like, oh, no. Native American women are beautiful. A lot of them are.
I thought we had Pocahontas for a reason.
Yes.
Just saying.
Yes. She can paint. She can paint with my colors. So
just one color.
The Native Americans. Also, to be clear, wasn't genocide. They were. Okay. Let me bring this up. This is one of those. Come again, stupid. They say, oh, wipe them out with smallpox blankets. Centuries before germ theory. If you tried to go back into that, if you tried to go back in time to 100 years after Columbus and explain to someone what a germ was, what a microbe was in a microscope, they'd burn you. They'd burn you alive. They'd say you're a witch. But we're supposed to believe that they're waging biological warfare. And the interesting thing is we have the numbers. Okay, the numbers are of the estimated 250,000 natives in Hispaniola, as that NBA, as Popovich says. Yeah. Columbus first stopped in the Americas in 1492. New infectious diseases wiped out a staggering 236,000 indigenous people by 1517, nearly 95% of their population. Look, for there to be a genocide, there's a debate where people are like, I don't know, do you have to actually wipe out, do you have to be successful and wipe out 100%? And then sometimes people go like, I don't know, maybe as long as it's 90%, if it's not really a battle, but they're unarmed and you could still consider that a genocide. These are the sort of discussions that might go on in the halls of higher learning. Never at any other point in history is it considered a genocide when it's guaranteed less than 5% who were murdered.
Right.
95% thought they had the sneezes. Wouldn't have been a big deal with some Claritin or Allegra. We didn't know.
We had no idea. But look, Stephen, they did walk around without masks.
Not to mention, look, when we're talking about the other 5%, almost every story that you've been taught about, there was a battle where there were significant casualties on both sides, no matter what Green Day tells you. They also warred before we got here. Yeah. So, look, and I understand that asshole-ish things were committed on all sides, okay?
Yeah.
Let's be clear about that. I'm not absolving all of, we're not just talking about Christopher Columbus, but if you want to talk about the Pilgrims, I'm not saying that there weren't acts of ill will committed from all sides. However, this idea that it was a peace-loving culture, horseback riding culture, that just got wiped out by the new settlers, well, look, it's not true, and you have to ask yourself, why, if it's not true, and I'll continue making the case here as to why it's not true, why, if it's not true, are they so dead set on making us believe this in school? Well, could it be that the basis of Western society, the basis of what has become known to be modern Christendom and life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, the United States of America, and I know we can talk about Columbus not setting foot in North America, we can get into all that, but my point remains here. If you remove the basis, if you bastardize the basis, you can convince everyone that this whole country was based on what? Genocide. That it was based on what? Slavery. Like half the country didn't fight in a war and huge numbers of people dying because they thought that slavery was wrong. Like Republicans, the overwhelming majority of Republicans didn't pass civil rights because it took some time to get to the ideals that we claimed, that we wrote down in ink. When we wrote down in ink the idea that all men are created equal, wasn't an accident. They could have easily said, except the blacks. They could have easily said, except the, back then they would have written Indians, right? But except the indigenous, right? I'm trying to copy paste what we're supposed to say. They could have easily done that. They didn't. This was them saying, all right, mark it, put us to the test. We've got to get there eventually. We've got to get to this point eventually, because they left a place where it wasn't even close. Wasn't even close. When you look at the rest of the world, there's still slavery going on. There's still genocide going on today. Okay, so here's the thing. Native Americans also committed bloody acts of war against each other. A historian, Bernard Bailyn, wrote, the natives were always involved in warfare, partly because life would become imbalanced in a way that needed justification and response and reprisal. And reprisals within their lives are very important. There were also a lot of natives who wanted Europeans to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's not even talk about Columbus. I'll get back to Columbus, but let's go to, the Aztecs, the Mayans, right? Rolling heads down pyramids. You all know what's going on. Okay.
Pulling out still beating hearts.
Wiping arrows on the backs of frogs. You all like the Mayans.
World ending in 2012.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Those shitty John Cusack film. You get it.
It was good.
Okay.
It was not.
It was not
says
good.
It was good.
Okay. Do you know, people here, do you guys know who the conquistadors are?
Yeah.
Okay. Conquistadors.
Yeah.
How many conquistadors were there?
In this room?
That's the trick. A few hundred.
That's it?
Yes, it was a few hundred conquistadors, okay? There weren't that many. Now, how do you think they conquered the many, many, many thousands? I don't have the numbers in front of me. I'm willing to guess tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. Yes, how do you think they managed to conquer them? There were so many natives. Okay, let me back up a little bit. The Mayans had a lot of gold.
Yeah.
Did you guys know this?
I did.
Yeah, they had a lot of gold. They had entire temples, entire structures filled with gold.
Yeah.
They had gold that could last generations and generations and generations, and they had been moved into nice big piles. How do you think, let me ask you this, how do you think they procured said gold? I'll give you a hint. It relates to why all the people who were enslaved by the gold-wielding assholes sided with a few hundred conquistadors. They couldn't have won a war or a genocide if they wanted to.
Yeah.
It was a bunch of natives who said, we're tired of being enslaved and watching our women being raped unless we collect gold. We feel like, they tell us that we have two options, right? Option one is go collect gold, or number two is they kill us unless we collect gold. We don't really feel like those are legitimate options. So man in the tin hat and funny red beard, can you help us out?
Right.
Here's another myth that you're taught in school. This is a very specific one. That Columbus himself was a renowned rapist.
Uh-oh. Is he getting Me Too'd?
While he initially described the Native Americans as kind and peaceful, Columbus had no problem with his men raping and killing them. There are horrific accounts of Columbus selling Native American women and young girls, along with brutal stories of his men killing and torturing Native people and even babies for fun. If you decide to look into it, proceed with caution.
I did! I did look into it. Here's the thing. I was also taught this in school.
What
it's
kid
not
show
true.
Is that?
I don't know. It's MTV.
It is
something
a kid
like that.
show.
They're
The way
about
she
to
was
play
talking.
Dick or Dildo. That's also a kid show.
She's talking
according to
down
YouTube.
to stupid people.
Yeah, the algorithm. I wanted to watch Monsters Inc. What's Dick or Dildo? So, look. This is they're when you same thing when people talk about the Bible, okay? They say, well, there are all these other books, why weren't these books included? It's actually pretty easy to understand. Apostolicity, right? This is the standard. It's were these people who were around directly at the time of Jesus Christ, were they consistent with each other? And or kind of they could be separated in that they knew a direct apostle, right? That's kind of why they're included, because there were some random books of people who wanted to get in on that Christ action saying there were flying unicorns and stuff, and people were like, all right, this isn't congruent with the rest that we have. It's not some anti-Christian Jewish conspiracy theory, okay? Let's be really clear about it. If you read the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's actually not that much to figure out there outside of understanding and having some insight into another Jewish sect that existed sort of autonomously from Christ. Kind of interesting to see sort of their messianic figureheads and what they believed, even though they were separated from... The point is, look, there's a reason that we picked those books in the Bible, okay? Were these written were they contemporary?
Yeah.
With Jesus, or were they contemporaries with the people who were there with Jesus? Here's what you need to understand when they're talking about Columbus being a rapist. It comes from two sources. Two. I looked into it. Two being the number of sources, the only number of sources referring to him as murdering children for fun being two. Now, and by the way, the first one comes from Michel de Cuneo, and it's not even the original letter. Okay, let's be clear about this. Michel de Cuneo was actually basically a lying frat boy aristocrat. And how do you know that he made this stuff up? Well, he talked about temples in the Caribbean were non-existent. He made up things that could be verified as factually false, and they were. And then he said, Columbus raped somebody. He had an axe to grind with Columbus. This is very clear, and he was wrong about a lot of other things that he wrote. For some reason, we don't do the same vetting when it comes to Columbus being a rapist. The other rumors of rape and this brutality, they come from a political enemy of Columbus, Fernando de, I hope I'm getting this right, Bobadilla. Bobadilla, Howard Stern's penis. So Bobadilla actually wanted to be governor himself. His writing, he only interviewed rebels who were unhappy with Columbus. He arrested Columbus and his brothers. He seized all his assets. He replaced him. This was basically what you would consider a coup. So in other words, the only two sources that make these claims are verifiably unreliable sources. And the point here is these historians who decide what the curriculum is with your children, are they applying their vetting?
Yeah.
And the determination of the veracity of their sources, are they applying the standards equally? This was also in direct opposition to Columbus's letter. So these are this is hearsay from people who wanted to tar and feather Columbus. Not saying he was perfect. I'm saying this idea now that has been widely accepted that he was a genocidal maniac who raped and killed for fun is not true. Likely, very similar to a lot of people, flawed. Churchill, necessary? Yes. Cheat on his wife? Probably. Abraham Lincoln, a lot of people, necessary? Yes. Did he make some mistakes? Sure. Have a crazy-ass wife? Absolutely. Okay, so in his own letter from Columbus, he actually ordered his men to stay away from Native women. This is from his journal. This is from his journal. Okay, keep in mind, this wasn't a press release.
Yeah.
In other words, he didn't expect someone outside of maybe his, if he had a little brother on the ship to read it. Yeah. I have given the men orders not to take anything from them against their will, so they have paid them for everything. I cannot believe that any man has ever met a people so good-hearted and generous, referring to the natives, so gentle that they did their utmost to give us everything they had. He also made sure that his men observed three vows of poverty, chastity, obedience. This was part of the practice. This was part of the code of ethics among his men. Did some of them break it? I'm sure they did.
Yeah. Absolutely. But I mean, this is also, think about the time period that we're talking about too. For these guys to have any kind of care for the people that they find in the land that they're going to kind of conquer or trade with, this is what happens. You go in, you wipe the people out, you take what's theirs, and you call it your own. That's what people were doing at this time. For these people to go in and be like, hey, don't take anything from them unless you give them something in return. They could have taken the island. It's an island.
So here's another myth. We got to get through this, and we have our cannibal correspondent. The myth is that the natives were peaceful, that Columbus showed up and that he terrorized them, that before Columbus, that they were, I've kind of already been through this. Look, there were two main tribes when we're talking about what's been going on here. And people talk about him. There's a specific story I remember being taught in school. They said he took their weapons and their bows and arrows and this kind of thing and disarmed them. Okay. There were two main tribes. There were the Arawaks and there were the Caribs, like Caribbean, I think is how it's pronounced, who were vicious cannibals, to be clear. Now, the Arawaks didn't have as advanced weapons. Like, they had stuff, but they didn't really have advanced weapons. And when Columbus came ashore, they're like, oh, no, cannibals. So they started getting really paranoid. They came in. They talked like, oh, my, what are you talking about? I'm like, we thought you were the cannibals. We're like, what? They're cannibals. And they go, yeah, they have these great bows and weapons. Yeah. And so then, of course, there was war with the people who were cannibalizing the Arawaks and saying, all right, you guys don't get to have bow and arrows anymore on account that you keep eating people. Doesn't that change the context a little bit? It's like, hold on a second. Why do you think that there was trading with some natives and not with others?
Cannibalism.
That was one of the deciding factors.
Yes, it was.
And I want to know which one of these you were taught in school. I was taught the genocide in school. I was taught that the whole reason they died was smallpox blankets.
The wiped out, like Popovich said, taught that.
I was taught in school. Granted, this was Canadian school, and I don't know that this one is taught in school. But a lot of people believe that Columbus went around to prove that the Earth was flat.
Oh,
yes.
Did you remember that? So that was something that used to be taught. I guess maybe now it's been so debunked that maybe they're not making that claim. You can go all the way back to the Greeks, and they believed that the Earth was round. So this idea that Columbus, now why do they say that? Because they want you to say, really? Was West what became known as Western civilization? Was it really more civilized when you look at the natives and how advanced they were? And Columbus thought his people thought the Earth was flat. No, it's not true. The goal to this is to try and undercut the foundations of the society, which, by the way, is the best place today in the world for former Spaniards, former Italians, whatever that Popovich guy was, I don't know exactly what he was talking about, and current Native Americans. Most of what you learned about Columbus is a lie, and most of what you've learned about the election, as far as you being in this crazy minority, in just thinking that maybe it wasn't the most secure and safe election of all time with mass mail-in voting, of course, which had never occurred on that scale, going against the state constitution. They want you to think that, hey, you're alone. No one else believes that. That's a lie. What you've learned about Columbus is a lie. And that you've been taught that Elizabeth Warren is 1/19th Cherokee and warrants her writing Pow Wow Chow is a lie as well. The point is, you don't trust your institutions. And guess what? A lot of the media, they want to blame you. I don't blame you at all. I blame them.
Watch Louder with Crowder live, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern.